So just to begin, I read you're a freelance media producer.
Hmm.
So what types of skills do you take from that to translate into, becoming a school board candidate?
Well, the interesting thing about my freelance work is that, I'm a contractor, so I do anything anyone will pay me for within the media landscape. And as a result, I just do such a variety of things. I mean, I've done like this, radio recordings where we've had to produce commercials. I do a lot of interviews, particularly in education. So I think the skills that I'll apply as a school board member is, when you're working with a client, you really have to listen to them and in a lot of ways help them figure out what it is they're trying to really do, because sometimes they'll have an idea but they don't really always know their goals. And I think what I've developed over the years of the 14 years now I've been a freelancer is really able to zero in on what some of the primary problems are. And I hope as a board member I can be a little I hope I can kind of look past some of the chatter and just say, okay, what's the real problem here?
Right, exactly. So with school funding, obviously that's still a big issue, and federal funds really, aren't exactly growing. So what do you think the district can do to adjust with that problem?
Well, they'll have to adjust. The one thing we have shared in common with the rest of the United States and the state of Missouri is we all will have the same problem. So it's not like Columbia will be uniquely cutting programs or people or personnel or services. I think everyone's going to look at what are the basics we need for our kids. And with the budget in 2013 that everyone's forecasting being so bad, the main thing that we'll be looking at will probably be as long as we can retain that good level of education, and we really can. I mean, we have some terrific teachers, and we have a high standard. But, it's like everyone says every year, you're going to look for the fat, and there's really not much more fat. So some of it is just looking what we can do without, and I can't honestly tell you what can we do without. I don't know that.
Right. Do you think maybe if you were like, what would it take for you to obtain that knowledge of what you could do without? Or do you honestly just think there really is nothing that you
Well, I think to obtain the knowledge of what we can do without, or what is, the things that need to be trimmed, really has to come from the professionals that work with it every day. We really have a good accounting office. Linda Quinley oversees the finances for the district, and having talked to her, and from what I know of her, she's very respected. And you can ask any number of accountants in town to go look at our budget and what could we do, and I think she would just be as competent as anyone else and say, well, this is what we're faced with and this is what we should do. So my role as a board member will be to defer to the experts that can really advise you and say, as much as I hate to admit it, maybe this is it, maybe that's it. So I don't come with a particular issue or agenda. I don't have a particular cause that I'm fighting to defend or to cut. And I think that's probably true with certainly the other candidates and the other board members. I mean, we really are. I think the current board members, have recognized that it really is what's in the best interest of the student first.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So.
And, money, budgeting, all of that stuff, always a problem. So what are your thoughts on the bond issue and tax levy?
Well, I've come out in favor of both, and I'm firmly behind them. I have my little yard sign. But that's not enough. The citizens of Columbia really have to recognize the importance of, there's that popular expression, paying it forward. I've already got sort of the angry phone calls from two individuals retired one raised her kids here and another moved here from out of state and said, well, it doesn't really affect me and I don't want to pay for it. And, I tried to share with them, the importance that everywhere you go in the United States, someone before you has contributed to your well-being there. And we have to really remember how we're, caretakers. We want to be good stewards of what we have, but we just have to grow. We are growing, and so we have to expand. And a part of that is building more buildings and hiring more staff and having more turf and light bulbs and paint and everything else. And even if it does not directly affect you, it will in some way, because as we educate our citizens, we're going to be around people that are well educated, and that's going to help all of us.
Right. So, administrators have discussed the achievement gap in Columbia. Do you see that is that a big issue in Columbia?
It is an issue in Columbia, and it is everywhere. Everyone looks at the statistics. The advantage in Columbia is that we do lead the state in having a narrowed achievement gap. We've set a high standard in Columbia, though, so that we want to continue reducing it. And a great example is over at West Boulevard Elementary. They identified a need. They've decided this is how we're going to try to solve it, and they've been working on that. And I think the purpose of the school board now is to give the teachers and the administrators permission to say, okay, what worked and what didn't work. We see incremental improvements because, you're just like anything. You can study all night for a test and maybe do okay on it the next day, but you may not retain that knowledge. And we're teaching kids for their lifetime of learning. So nothing we do is going to suddenly make them score dramatic on a test to show that, oh, we've narrowed the achievement gap. We're trying to teach the whole person, and some of that is we've got good steps and it's happening, but a lot of that is going to be incremental. And I think we've demonstrated. I think the district has demonstrated it's in good hands and it's doing that. It's just that you're always improving. You cannot sit around and say, oh, well, look, we got 1% improved. No, okay, what's our next step? We just have to accept that you're not going to suddenly spring up 5 points at a time. You have to take baby steps, and I think that's what the district's been doing.
Yeah.
To their credit.
Right. Yeah. So, what would you do with the achievement gap? What things would you implement, or what would you hope to implement?
Sure.
To help or better the achievement?
Well, as I've said at the other forums and at the citizens forums we've had, and I really believe this, one of my, if I have two issues, if you will, I don't want to be an issue candidate, but the one of them really is increasing and certainly contributing more to our pre-K education, and specifically parents as teachers. I've been a beneficiary of parents as teachers. We've reduced it so much now that their budget, that parents as teachers has to actually set a standard of where they can serve. They're not really open to everyone. They just have a certain segment of the population that they reach, and that's fine. That's where we are budgeted. But if we can continue to hammer away on that early childhood education, I think smarter minds than mine have demonstrated that is a significant way to reduce the achievement gap is that early childhood education, getting those kids excited about learning early on, and getting that first inkling of education where the parent is involved with their education. That's a really good step, and so that's where I would start. And
you talked about like students wanting to learn. I saw you do have a Twitter, and I saw you tweeted about wanting students to learn how to learn. So what do you mean by that?
Well,
then?
That's a good observation. The Twitter that I have at RexCone4 CPS is just as I've work in my own job, and as I work with a lot of educational groups doing satellite feeds and educational extension type work, and the one thing that always comes up, whether you're a senior in high school, whether I'm doing a anatomy workshop for a senior off in Kennett, Missouri, or we're doing a reading program in Bolivar, Missouri for second graders, it's teachers in Columbia Public Schools certainly teach to what they're required by the state of Missouri, but so much of it is they're training the kids' minds how to find the information, how to retrieve the information. The trend that they talk about in the direction that United States education is going to is retrieving data as opposed to remembering data. It's still important to learn your times table, but you don't necessarily have to know nowadays how to spell a certain word when you can just look it up so quick. And I'm not saying that we're all going to go that way, but I think the teachers have already recognized before the administrators or the DESE, the Department of Secondary and Elementary Education, they still have this certain standard of what we want to teach to. And I think teachers recognize, look, I'm teaching the kid how to do these things. visually, it's an amazing thing when you see a child in a kindergarten for the first time hold a pair of scissors and first use them incorrectly and slowly learn how to use those scissors. And the kindergarten teacher can give you multiple examples of how they're teaching that kid how to transfer that knowledge to learning something else. It's a very kinetic type of learning, but she's going to transfer that over to coloring in lines, and that's going to be transferred to working on a PowerPoint graph, and that's going to be transferred into getting across a point that someone needs to make someday in a business presentation, all because they've had to be taught how to do that. Sure, could they learn it on their own? Well, maybe sometime, but we want our kids to excel, and here in Columbia, we have great teachers that are helping those kids with that. So, to answer your question, I think part of what teachers do is certainly they teach history and math, but so much of it is teaching kids how to learn that information for themselves, and then it's a skill they'll have the rest of their life. So that's
right. Exactly. I think that's pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think some of the potential opportunities are with Battle High School, with the new Battle High School coming to the district?
Well, it's just terrific. The first primarily it'll relieve the crowding that are at Hickman, Rockbridge, and the way it's I really am encouraged by several years ago when the election, through an election process, the citizens decided to format our grade levels, so we all have freshman through senior. That's what I grew up with, so I assume that's the correct way, But a lot of it is helping freshmen realize when they're in high school that freshman year counts. The way we currently have it allocated, they're freshmen, they're kind of the big dogs on campus in their junior high, but put them in that environment with their sophomore, junior, and seniors, and they're low, and they're suddenly realizing, oh, this is serious. These people really do actually read a book and study and do all these serious things, in addition to juggling their sports and extracurricular activities. So I'm really encouraged by Battle High. I've driven by there a few times, just to see the growth, and I say, give them a great building. This is the thing that people sometimes, I'm getting off subject here, but so a lot of people will sometimes complain about a particular building or a particular service that we offer, and you say, oh, that's too nice, or it's the Taj Mahal or whatever, and you have to remind yourself, this is where kids work. They're there all day. The employees of the Columbia Public School, this is their job. They're here all day and into the night, and so to say that, oh, we're just going to put them off in a cinder block building with navy gray paint and cheap flooring, it's like you start realizing that they don't really care much about this building, and so I don't really care much about what I'm doing here. I'm not saying certainly you don't want to give them gold-plated toilet faucets, but you do have to realize that this is where people spend their time, a lot of time, and if we put an importance on that space, then that'll transfer over into the importance they feel for that space too.
Do you see any challenges with the new high school?
Yes, already, I was talking to a HVA service guy yesterday, and his daughter, as is mine, we didn't realize our kids go to the same school. My daughter will be in the first freshman class as part of this reorganization. We live in the Hickman district, but he's really concerned because he doesn't quite know. He has chosen not to be involved with the different panels, and they're discussing it, and so he's chosen not to really investigate where his kid's going to be in 2 years, in her ninth grade year. And so to him, it's going to suddenly come as a shock when 2 weeks before classes starts, he finds out, oh, where's my kid supposed to go to again? And, that's going to happen. It's any new school. Alpha Hart, same thing happened. I mean, suddenly, as well as you can plan on buildings being built and feeding that school, suddenly you have a pocket of kids who did not register early and just show up that first day. And that certainly will happen to Battle. It'll be exciting and frustrating both, but in 5 years, when everyone's used to it, everyone will say, yeah, what was the big deal? It'll still be frustrating to some people, but that's their responsibility to try to find some of these things out for themselves. So